Welcome to the Cult of Domesticity podcast, a podcast about history, true crime, and whatever life brings us. I'm Courtney, and every week I am joined by another fascinating person. Let's see what we're going to talk about this week. As close as you can hope for. Welcome back, Devotees Collective. This week, we're here with Natassia from Brodette Nation, the most badass podcast you're ever gonna find.
At least I think so.
I think so. You guys recorded you recorded in Afghanistan?
We did. Yeah, Emma and Kevy's back there, so I can try to see if I can get her back on the show while she's in Afghanistan kicking some serious butt.
I just love you're like, if we might have to leave at some point to do our jobs. And I was like, what is happening?
Like, we're gonna have to leave in case there's some incoming. Okay, cool.
Cool. We'll just come back. You guys won't notice, but many things will have happened in between. Yeah. The most that happens to me is people are doing things. So one of the two police stations near my apartment will go off and drive past. Or someone's picking up a pizza next door and they like to blast music. So I play, what's that song they're playing in my head? Or the trains. Yeah, this is not a great apartment for a recording podcast. That's all it's telling me.
Yeah, listen, I have 3 boys and I was just happy that they're asleep. But the baby might wake up. You might hear screaming in the background.
Babies do that a lot. And I'm just impressed you have 3 boys. My mom barely made it through with 1. My brother did a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, they're still young, so give me time. I might not make it.
We did almost lose my brother at Disney World once, or Land, whichever one's in Florida. But it was fine. I was like 3, my sister was 5, which means my brother was like 8. He just wandered off. We found him. He's still here. I've mentioned him. Most people, it's more likely my sister will be on, but my brother, the joke is he's the ghost for my friends. They're like, you never talk about him. I'm like, well, we almost lost him. He's done a lot of things. Like, he's that person. I figured out every family has the one child that's that person, and this is how my brother is that person. He went to a party at Taylor Swift's house. He's partied with Ryan Lochte. He's like almost blown up our house. He's just that person.
Wow. I mean, I normally just party with my kids, and my brothers are not doing any of that cool stuff. Although one brother is in Germany right now. He's in the army, and then my other brother's in Afghanistan. So yeah, that's where we're at. We're all of course, I'm in the Air Force. The boys are in the army. And that's all they're doing right now. They're not partying with T-Swift. I'm actually pretty disappointed in them. So
he's just like, but everybody has that one sibling that if you said something, you're all just like, nah, not shocked.
Yeah, that's Daniel.
Yeah, see, every family has one. My brother told us, and we all go, actually, no, not even that shocked. Not even. He was a +1, I should mention. He wasn't the primary invitee. But that's always he just rolls that way. We're just like, cool. I have a picture of it on my phone. Or no, I used to. I got a different phone. I have a picture of it somewhere of him with Taylor Swift, but it's weird to think of that.
Yeah.
But speaking of someone else who loves British things, me, we're going to talk about Guy Fawkes. So, do you know anything about Guy Fawkes before we start?
I do not, but I'm very, very excited since this is the first time I've ever been on a true crime podcast. It is a lifelong dream. And it was a shit ton of work. I was like, I don't know if I really like this. I'm like, it's like last minute before like a paper's due, like in school. I had like an hour and I'm like finally putting my notes together. I was like, oh my gosh, so much pressure. So I'm excited to hear about your guy, and I'm excited to tell you about my family.
So I have the historical case. So we're back. I mean, there is crime in this. It's a big crime. Most people would know Guy Fawkes from V for Vendetta or The Bonfire Days in the UK, or my favorite poem, Remember, the 5th of November, Gunpowder, Treason, and Plot.
Okay, I have heard that.
Yes. His, I believe it's his face is the anonymous masks now too, so they're all Guy Fawkes masks, which is, I think they got them from V for Vendetta. So he was born in 1570 in Stonegate, York, the UK. He is the second of 4 kids born to Edward Fawkes, which I'm saying Fox like Fox. It is not spelled that way, in case you're wondering. It's Fawkes. His father is a proctor and advocate of the consistory court at York, which is nice position. He's not doing bad. Let's put it that way. I would say not serf level, but working on your way to the gentry. And his wife's name was Edith. They were part of the Church of England. His paternal grandparents, specifically his grandmother, born Ellen Harrington, she was the daughter of a prominent merchant who served as Lord Mayor of York in 1536, which Lord Mayor at that point, prime spot. You're schmoozing with the nobility, you're hosting parties, you're in charge of the town, you have significant power on what's going on. However, do you know a lot about the Protestant Reformation and what's going on? And
I have read some historical fiction. I have seen a lot of HBO shows, so that's where I'm coming from.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit familiar with it.
So basically at this point, the Church of England has split off from the Catholic Church. We're past Henry, we're like in, double check my date. So we're hitting the end of the Tudor era at this point, and we're moving into the Stuarts. So this is where England and Scotland, quote unquote, come together, because it's not formal for a hot minute, historically wise, through James I. So we have Henry VIII saying, hey, I would like to marry more ladies. And
who doesn't?
But he wants to divorce his first wife, who is the most Catholic of Catholics, Catherine of Aragon, her nephew. So hard with this because there's so many people related in this. The Tudors is that of the Holy Roman Empire, so he can control the Pope. So Henry can't divorce her because Catherine was originally married to Arthur, who was Henry's brother. That's not okay in the Bible.
Yeah, he just got like his brother's wife, and he's like, I didn't sign off for this. Why do I got to marry her? Right?
He kind of, they were very attracted to each other, but really his father, Henry VII, was like, I like that Spanish money. And the War of the Roses had kind of just ended, so they needed money. So Henry basically breaks off to form the Church of England so he can marry Anne Boleyn. We have it continuing on to his son, Edward the Umpteenth. I can't remember which Edward Tudor. And it's fine. Edward is more fanatical. Then we switch to Mary Tudor, who is like, nah, I'm Catholic, because her mother was Catherine of Aragon. Switches back from Elizabeth to Protestant, where people aren't as persecuted as much. And then we reach James I. That is the English Reformation, very quickly and very poorly done from my memory. But so in this landscape of religions going back and forth and prosecutions and all of that, we have Guy's mother's family were Catholics, but in secret. And in certain periods, you could, like, if you just showed up to the Church of England service, it was fine. If you paid an extra tax, this is going to get, like, the Catholic thing continues on and on in England until the mid 1800s, 1900s, with them becoming full citizens. And his cousin, Richard Cowling, actually was a Jesuit priest. So when Guy was born, we don't actually know when he was born because it wasn't common practice to record the date. He would, like, they didn't think he was going to be important at all or be remembered by history, probably. Not like Elizabeth I or James I, you know. But we do know he was baptized in the Church of St. Michael le Beffrey, York, on April 16th. So, you know, basing on generalities of traditions, he was probably born on the 13th of April because there's a gap of about 3 days. They wait to baptize children because childbirth and birth in general at that point, when you most likely you could die quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna let you know, after having 3 kids, it felt like I was dying, so I can absolutely assume that it could kill you.
Minus modern medicine too.
Yeah.
And lack of clean things. I mean, they did boil a lot of things. In 1579, Guy's 8, his father dies, and his mother, remember, she has 4 kids. So she waits the designated amount of time, but you need to get married because you have 4 kids to support. So she remarries to a Catholic man named Dennis Bainbridge, or Dinos Bainbridge. This is like late Middle English, more modern English, but spelling, man, spelling. It's fun.
I can hardly spell now, and that's with word check.
Oh, I love standardized spelling so much. I've read so many 18th century texts where you're like, what word is that? Is it this word or this word? Context.
Kind of like Beowulf, where you're like reading it and you're like, I want to like this, but I don't know what's going on right now. Like, I don't understand these words.
Beowulf is traditional, really old English and like Anglo-Saxon. And this is like Shakespearean English. So it's technically, if I remember from the Medievalist podcast, it's modern English, but it's like we're still in that point where it's transitioning to more of what we would recognize clearly. So it's still a headache. It's not fun.
Yeah, it's better than Beowulf. That's what, is that where, yeah, maybe?
Oh, so much better than Beowulf.
Okay.
I read Beowulf for my Patreon Halloween. I regretted doing that choice. And I have so much more appreciation for voice actors. So this might have been where Guy became more Catholic through the Bainbridge's family Catholic tendencies, as well as, the other families of the region, the Pulney and the Percy families of Scotland, as well as from his time at the St. Peter's School in York. So the north of England has always been more of a bastion of tradition, of Catholicness. They fought Henry VIII on it. There's a lot of background that I'm not going to cover, but just know it's kind of a powder keg of secret Catholic and Protestant tradition. So the school he went to, the governor had spent about 20 years in prison for recusancy, basically being Catholic. And its headmaster, John Pulney, came from a school of a noted Yorkshire Catholics, the Pulneys of Blubber Houses. So we also know from a book published in 1915 on the Pulneys of Yorkshire, author Catherine Pullen really pushes that his Catholic education came from his Harrington relatives, who were known for like having Catholic priests hiding them, because you had to hide them for your services, and you have just services in someone's house, and there'd be, I believe, I can't remember what they're called, but America, we would think of them as on the railroad, the Underground Railroad for slavery. They had like hidden rooms. They did that for priests in England to keep them so they wouldn't be persecuted, and the people who were living there wouldn't be persecuted for being Catholic. So we know that Guy has a priest accompanying him to Flanders in 1592 to 93. Other really famous students in this school were John Wright and his older brother Christopher, who would also be involved in the plot, Oswald Tesmond, Edward Oldcorn, and Robert Middleton, who would become a priest. Don't worry, the Middleton would be executed for that later on. So he leaves school, probably wasn't, he probably got a decent education for the time, but he's not like a nobleman's son. You get much more practical education. He goes to the service of Anthony Brown, first Viscount of Montague. The Viscount immediately did not like Fawkes and dismissed him. He then moves to Anthony Maria Brown, the second Viscount of Montague, who would become that at 18. And there is one source that claims he got married at this point, had a son, but we have no other accounts to confirm that phrasing and stuff like that. So it's hard. It's a long period of time. A lot of things have disintegrated, disappeared, maybe locked in someone's attic.
Been there. I'm just kidding. It's like, no, my baby's never been locked in an attic, but I was just trying to relate to the story. The much I can relate, as in I'm Catholic, and I grew up in, Southern North Carolina, where
it's Episcopal.
It's like people think you're pretty much doing witchcraft if you're a Catholic, and that you're going to hell. So that's pretty much all that I can relate to. But for the record, I don't lock my babies in attics. So
yeah, no, the witchcraft thing and the ideology, it's pretty much the same. So Guy decides, you know what, I'm going to become a soldier, which not a bad profession, especially if you're middle, like trying to move up in some regards. Better bets the Navy, worse food, weirder hours, but
yeah, that's the Navy.
The Navy.
Nobody really likes the Navy. I'm just kidding, but not really.
So
for the Air Force.
Well, they don't have planes
at that time, right?
No, your options are the Army or the Navy, and this is the point where Britain's Navy is growing and the naval industry is booming. So you do actually get paid. You get paid better. You get paid a lot better to be in the Navy. Chances of dying in a distant land I would say about the same. It's just, chances of starving to death higher in the Navy, I would go with, just from my, if your boat breaks in the middle of the Atlantic, you're gonna starve to death most likely.
Truth.
So Guy decides to sell the small estate in Clifton, which he inherited from his father in 1592, to go fight for the armies of Catholic Spain in the Low Countries, which is like Netherlands and, southern Scandinavia. Because in case you didn't know, the Spanish own that because marriage and shit.
Yeah.
People were like, yeah, he's a good fighter, he's brave. And this army of Flanders that the Spanish put together was an international force, not uncommon at the time. Actually, I think it would be really rare for all ships to be 100% the nationality and like the armies to be 100%. Because if a war is out and all your whole career is being a soldier, being a fighter, you're going to go to the next side. You're just going to keep going where the pay is. So at the time, the army is about 62,000. You have about 20,000 Germans, 20,000 Netherlanders, 10,000 Spaniards, and about 460 Scots and English. We have the consensus that Guy is a good soldier, brave, dependable, well thought of among his peers, which for a soldier is good because if you're well thought of among your peers, chances of surviving can be higher. He never made it above the rank of the junior officer rank, which I don't know how hard it is now to get above that rank if you're starting out at the bottom.
Well, I mean, it's pretty much until you get to my rank right now, which is an 04, which is a major. It's pretty automatic. I mean, you got to do something really bad not to get it.
Okay. Yeah, I guess you guys don't have to pay for your commissions now, so that's a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, wow, I didn't know we had to pay for them back in the day.
Oh yeah. If you wanted to be an officer, you had to pay for it. There's records of him behaving gallantly at the siege of Cadiz in 1596. And we see in 1599, he's described as being in great want, which could mean financially as well as like, let's not lie, it's probably financially. He's broke. He probably needs money, as all soldiers do at most points,
Mm-hmm.
We see in the early 1600s, he travels to Spain on 2 separate occasions in 1603, seeking support from a reluctant Spanish court for another military venture in aid of English Catholics, which the foreign European Catholics were always the English fear. I just love the one fear they had would be, especially before Scotland, the Bonnie Prince Charles, like that was all defeated. Their fear would be like that the French or the Spanish would go around and land in Ireland and then take over the whole island. Like constant fear of this. Additionally, when he's fighting in the Netherlands, he picks up on the serious like unrest among English Catholics who are really not happy about the disadvantages they have to be subjected to. So they can't be in the House of Lords or the House of Commons. They can't vote. They can't have, like, their ability to move in society is limited. Like, they can't move up or down. Like, they can move down, but moving up's a lot harder. Like, they could have all the money in the world, but they're not going to have the same status as someone who's in the Church of England. So I could see why, like, if you were traditionally a Catholic family and you had all this wealth and status and all of a sudden it changes, you would be pissed.
Very. But I mean, I guess the same thing kind of happened to the Protestants when Mary took over, right?
Yeah. It was a lot of people did the flip-flop where they were like, oh, I was just doing, going with the flow and hiding their real beliefs and happy when one went to the other. Elizabeth was in some regards, she did burn probably similar amounts of people, or go after similar amount of heretics, but she more, I think, used it as a tax method. Like, yeah, fair. Pay a tax, you got to keep those coffers up, especially because Henry VIII loved to spend money.
Yeah, she probably had to rebuild the estate or the wealth because, her daddy had so many wives and he liked to spend that money. Based off of my knowledge from the HBO show Tudors. So,
the fact he liked to spend money is very evident in that. And he did. He loved spending money. He was that child that no one ever told him no. And so he's like, I want to do a great campaign. They're like, okay. And it was like, I want to go over to France and show them that we still own Cadiz. Okay. Or Calais. And he's like, yeah. And they would spend so much money on it. And then they had to tax. And the tax system was you had to go to Parliament and get them be like, hey, we're going to raise taxes. And if they said no, the answer was no, because you're basically going to be taxing those men in that room who would have to tax their tenants. So if they didn't want to do it, they ain't going to do it. And they could raise their own armies. So one of these discontented Catholics was Robert Catesby, and he's really the leader of the Gunpowder Plot. He's a gentleman from Warwickshire who most people think was born in 1573. His family suffered from a lot of fines for being Catholic, and his father, Sir William Catesby, had been imprisoned for his faith. They were related to numerous prominent Catholic families in the Midlands, and it's from this core group that he could recruit people into this circle to complete this plot. They really were hoping when James, so he's the 6th of Scotland, the 1st of England, came to the throne in 1603, that conditions for Catholic would be better. But, it's this weird situation. He's a new king. He's Catholic, but he wants to keep the country at a level playing field, so he's not going to rock the boat too much. As well as the signing of a peace treaty between England and Spain in 1604 really meant that English Catholics could not get any more help from the Spanish. And they're like, well, how do we fix this shit? And we have a gentleman we brought up earlier, Oswald Tesamon, who went to school with Guy, who praised Guy, and he said he's really sound in his face. He has technical expertise because remember, he's been a soldier, and he's a strong moral character. So he pretty much has the plotters bringing Guy in. So he's like how Guy went from just being a soldier in Europe, plucked out, brought back to England to become part of this plot. So they were like, hey, Guy, remember I said he went to Spain twice. They sent him back in undercover diplomacy, so he's a spy, to Spain to see if something did happen, would the Spanish support it? I know there's a treaty, but I'm sure treaties are only good if both sides uphold them. And
very true.
If the Spanish were willing to, break that, would they support them? And we don't really know what came out of that. A lot of the information we get is from Thomas Winter, who was close with Catesby. He really is the one who, after he's arrested, spills his guts, basically, and is how we know how the plot developed.
So he snitched.
He snitched real hard because they had a couple people, and he broke down. I can't remember what he was tortured on, but it probably wasn't pleasant or clean. He pretty much confirms that the whole group was willing to go on with or without Spanish support. So they kind of hinted, they're like, Spain, you might want to support us. But as well as, so like I said, his schoolmate vouched for him. Some English Catholic emigres who vouched for his reliability. His main reason was his expertise using explosives. So he's our bomb maker, which you don't think of in this period, bomb makers being that big of a deal. But remember, we have gunpowder. We don't have dynamite yet, but we have cannonballs and all that. So there's ways to make things go boom quickly.
I think people who can make bombs are pretty rare, or at least, especially now. I mean, our explosive, we call them EOD. I can't remember the name. I'm the worst of remembering what the acronyms actually stand for, but our explosive guys and gals, I mean, they're hard to come by. I don't think that has changed. Not a whole lot of people out there want to do that job.
I think it's also controlling the level of explosion and making it work where it's not just, anybody can make something go boom. But if you can make it go boom in a certain way, in a controlled way, the way you want it to, that's a talent.
Concur.
And now I'm on a watch list. But, okay. So we're going to be reconstructing the plot based off the confessions of two surviving ringleaders. So we have Guy and Thomas Winter. Winter's confession most likely was written for publication. Well, it's his own account, written by him, but it's substantially true, but you can see where someone's exaggerating. Anyone who's read enough of these, and if the consensus is that it's exaggerated by historians, it's most likely exaggerated. You read enough of these accounts kind of things and you're throwing a little flourish, just copying and pasting. I see it. While Fawkes's confession showed that he knew a most of the secrets. Winter was indeed the true like top level. So Guy would be like a second level conspirator. Winter is like that inner circle. They're all sitting at the round table with the bread strings and the timelines, and both confer that the mastermind is Robert Catesby. So Winter and Fawkes actually had a lot in common. They traveled to Spain on similar missions to gauge the Spanish involvement, and they met in Ostend, which is right across the English Channel, in early 1604, which pretty much is when the last time they had a chance to establish whether or not they're going to get practical support. So if they do this, will the Spanish supply them with money, troops, extra supplies, things you need? Again, they meet Hugh Owens, the intelligencer on England at the court in Brussels, Sir William Stanley, and they both push Fawkes towards Winter. They meet again. Fawkes and Winter meet again at Dunkirk. Yes, that Dunkirk. And they confer that, quote, does somewhat in England if the peace with Spain helped us or not. And that is, end quote, that is the actual text, and I am doing my best. England is spelled with an I, in case you're wondering. So the two cross the channel together. I'm assuming it's like a rom-com, but maybe Ocean's 11 kind of deal where they're traveling. They call on Catesby at his London lodgings in April 1604. And this is where Winter goes, yeah, the Spanish aren't going to support us, and we just have to get Catesby to agree that there's only one way forward. So this means there's no Spanish army. The chance of putting a Catholic monarch on the throne is effectively gone. So they're going to put together a plan that they can do on their own and achieve their dreams. I mean, they're dreaming big.
Yeah. They got no Spanish army to back them up.
They got nothing backing them up but their dreams and scattered friends.
Passion and willpower.
And a lot of gunpowder. So Catesby goes, he's like, okay, let's destroy Parliament. And with gunpowder, he only tells Winter and John Wright, but, you know, he meets with another friend, the Earl of Northumberland's cousin and the estate officer, Thomas Percy. I'm gonna guess it's the same one who relative of the one Anne Boleyn really liked. You know, Percy visits Catesby in May and is so mad against the inactivity of this, like, the right-thinking Catholics. And so at that point, he's like, okay, let's get Fawkes and Percy in on this. They have to take an oath of secrecy. And, you know, oaths are legitimate shit. It's like a pinky promise, but worse. If you break it.
Pinky promises are big in my house.
Yeah. So on May 24th, Percy, using his personal goodwill of John Dudley Carleton and John Hipsley, so they're fellow officers of Northumberland's household, they take it upon themselves to lease a small house adjacent to the Lord's Chamber from a gentleman named Henry Fares of Baddesley, Clinton, who in turn had rented the property from John Wynard, keeper of the old Palace of Westminster. So it's basically they rent a small house next to the Lord's Chamber in London, so right by Parliament. So initial plan, I'm assuming it's drawn in crayon. Don't ask me why. I always have assumed this was drawn in crayon. Or like charcoal, it's just a burnt piece of thing. They're like, okay, we're gonna do a mine from the cellars underneath the Palace of Westminster through the foundations of Parliament. Fawkes, quote, because his face was most unknown, end quote, who would take the name John Johnson. Yes, that's the one they went with. Took charge of the building, pretending to be Percy's servant. So basically, it literally is Ocean's 11, but if they didn't have as good of a plan, they're going to dig under, use the cellar of this house, dig under the Palace of Westminster, dig under the House of Lords so they could set up a bunch of gunpowder.
And how long is this digging going to take? Are they we can get this done in a couple days, or they're it's going to take us a year to do this and nobody's going to notice us digging?
So it's the end of May, and the plot doesn't happen until November. So it's going to take a minute.
And nobody's going to notice them digging?
I mean, if you know where Parliament is on the river, it's by the river, so there could be ways to take it out. It just depends if people notice you taking large amounts of earth out. So we also have Catesby's house in Lambeth, which is on the south bank of the Thames. And this is where they're going to store all the gunpowder and mining paraphernalia because they could just take it across the river over to Westminster at night. So they're like, we'll just cross it. Keep crossing it. Keep crossing it. At this point, they employ a 6-man Robert Keyes to look over the Lambeth end of the operation, just to stay in this house, watch gunpowder, I'm assuming while drinking wine or ale and making sure everything's going well. Well, there's a severe outbreak of the plague that prompted...
Typical. Yeah, sounds about right. Right in the middle of your plan to like dig under Parliament. Here comes the plague.
How rude of the plague. How don't they know we're planning shit? So the plotters basically disperse into the countryside until February 1605 because they ain't getting that shit. And at the end of Michaelmas law term, they meet again in London. So we see them breaking. In this period, Scottish commissioners had negotiated a proposed union between England and Scotland, which took over, Percy's conveniently located lodgings for their deliberations. So they're having these important meetings at their meeting place, not for them, but to unite the two countries. But they did begin digging just before Christmas. So they've started already. By Christmas Eve, they had actually tunneled up to the wall of Parliament, so a couple weeks. But again, there was news of another delay, and so they're like, well, fuck it. We'll wait. So they wait until early February to stop digging. By this point, they had actually rowed the gunpowder over across the river and concealed it in the house. You have to remember, this is old school gunpowder, so if it gets wet, you have to wait for it to dry out. You bit fucked. Because I'm sure you know, wet gunpowder doesn't act well.
Yeah, it's not good for at least the person who wants to shoot it.
Yeah, exactly. So the reason why they put everything, they were like, okay, we'll consolidate everything into Percy's house. So if they're gonna get discovered, it's gonna be one house, not several. They spend another fortnight, aka 14 days, to hack their way through solid foundations. And this is like old school stone solid fucking foundation. They're going too slowly because, again, hacking through stone. So they were like, you know what? Let's get 3 new people. So we get Christopher
Let's
Wright.
just keep bringing people in and just saying, hey, yeah, we're just building this thing underneath this Parliament.
We're a fan of tunnels.
Yeah, not suspect whatsoever.
Ignore the barrels that say explosive. We just like tunnels. We're making a maze. It's an underground maze, guys. Help us with it. You can play
the new rage.
We can play candle tag. I'm gonna go with its candle tag. I was gonna say laser tag, but they don't have lasers or like guns like that. So yeah, they pull up Christopher Wright, who also went to school with Fawkes, and is John's brother, Robert Winter, who's Thomas's brother, and John Grant. Now they get a bit lucky. They're tunneling and they hear a rush of sound over their head. They freak the fuck out because they're like, what do we do? But because remember, Fawkes is the least known face out of all of these guys because it's a lot of like upper gentry, like well-known wealthy people. So they're like, Fawkes.
And then there's like, I'm just this regular guy, this regular dude.
I'm just this soldier dude. I'm gonna go check out Parliament.
I'm just a Joe. No bigs.
So that's when they discovered that the tenant of the ground floor vault below the Lord's chamber, so the House of Lords, who was a coal merchant named Ellen Bright, was moving out. So they're like, say what now?
Like, that's prime real estate.
That's prime real estate for some gunpowder. And who has some gunpowder? C'est moi? So Percy's like, I'm gonna tap that, and he works at securing the lease from Wynard, and the conspirators are like, fuck mining. This is work. We are gentlemen. And they're like, we're just gonna sneak all the powder into the vault, and that's easier. So all they have to do is wait for a session of the House of Lords. Because they had been digging for so long, they didn't really have a plan on what they were going to do, when... Because, they had to dig this tunnel, and it took a while. And they had an additional plan that they were going to kidnap the heir. But that's not a guarantee because Prince Harry could be blown up with his father. And, because Percy has Northumberland's patronage, Northumberland's a big player. They've been big players in British politics for centuries. He undertook the plan to abduct James' second son, Prince Charles, the Duke of York, hastening away from court and, like, you know, trying to get him away so they could have at least an heir to pop him in and be like, you're Catholic now. We're all Catholic. Congratulations. His colleagues are like, you know, we're going to have to get him all the way into the Midlands where there's more Catholics. So let's go for Princess Elizabeth, who's residing with John Lord Harrington 4 miles from Coventry. To this end, they need to get an armed force of mounted Catholic gentry and, you know, Midland squires to gather. And Catesby's like, let's hunt. That's a great way to get armed people together. Let's go shoot things.
Yeah.
So they were like, we're going to go to Ashby St. Ledgers on the 5th of November. And, you know, you have to think about, okay, she's a woman. We can't have a woman rule alone, especially a young girl.
Of course not. Yeah.
So we need a man of great birth and political stature. Who could do it? You know, they really never set upon anyone for that. Basically, they procrastinated that decision. They're like, we'll see who supports us and how we can do this. Catesby, because he's like the highest ranking, he was like, we'll make sure our friends are dissuaded from attending the opening of Parliament. And, you know, whether or not he planned to do it, it's really hard to tell. Like, some people, Robert Keyes said maybe not. He seemed like to want everyone blown up. So they spent the summer away from London in the countryside. In Guy's case, he went overseas. He was in Flanders from Easter to August. Keep basically trying not to get caught because they're all like just waiting for Parliament to open. I have to think that's got to be the most difficult thing. Everything's set up. Everything's kind of fallen into place. You're just waiting.
Yeah, it's a waiting game.
4 months. So while he's in Brussels, he meets up with Hugh Owens, and the plan was to have Owens speak for them in the courts of continental Europe after the fact. So he's their representative after this happened. Meanwhile, back in England, there's pretty pressing problem. Catesby is the only one who's been borne the financial burden of this year-plus plot. So basically, he's like, guys, I'm getting fucking broke here.
Yeah, like, I'm running out of money. I'm gonna need to ask somebody for some more money. Can we wrap this up?
What do you think they did?
They went and asked somebody for some money.
They brought more people in.
They brought more people. Did those people have money?
Yes. They brought in wealthy supporters who can foot the bill. So we have Ambrose Rookwood, Sir Everard Digby, and Francis Tresham. We're 10 plus people now. There's so many people.
Everybody's supposed to be keeping this a secret.
They did the blood oath. They sacrificed a child. I don't know, but they did their best. Yeah, no one was like particularly excited these new through. They're like, say what now? And you want me to give money so you have a paper trail to my ass.
Yeah.
Digby and Rookwood were persuaded about they're like, this is necessary, guys. It's pretty necessary. Tresham was really, really not happy about it. And he was like, Catesby, I will give you so much money if you don't do this. Call this off.
Like, I'm done. Let's move on.
I think he didn't even want to do it. It was just like, it'd be like your friend telling you, hey, we're doing this. I need you to support me financially to help me do this. You're now involved. And he's just trying to do the best with a shitty hand. So Catesby's like, yeah, sure. And he's like, hey, no, I'm still fucking do this. So Fawkes and Winter brought fresh gunpowder into the vault because they were afraid that, you know, the existing stock was damp, which is not the best thing for gunpowder.
Nope.
It goes boom in a more unplanned way.
Yeah, uncontrolled, unplanned, don't know what's going to happen kind of way.
Yeah. So October 3rd, Parliament's delayed for a month. New date, November 5th, the 5th of November. So, you know, we see Winter attending the ceremony at Lord Montague's entourage. Like, he knows that Salisbury and other leading members are at the council. By the end of October, all the main plotters are meeting in London. At the 26th, we see Catesby and Fawkes returning to White Webb's in Enfield Chase, and this is really the home of the Catholic Anne Fawkes. And from here, they heard the news that Prince Henry would not be accompanying his father to Parliament. So their first choice is not doing that because the king, whoever is the monarch, has to open parliament. So we see Catsby's goal of recapturing him coming back up, but there's again no plan. On the 27th, Winter learns from someone in the peer's household that Montague received a warning against attending the opening of parliament, and Montague was like, yeah, I'm taking this to court. Winter panics because he's like, oh fuck, someone told. He goes to White Webb's, basically is trying to convince Catsby that, you know, this shit's up.
Yeah, we got to go.
Yeah. Catsby is like, no, we're gonna keep going. He sends out again Guy, because remember, his face is not known.
Nobody knows who this dude is.
He goes and checks the cellar. Nothing's disturbed. November 1st, which is a Friday, Winter and Catsby meet an agitated Trisham, and they basically go, you fucked us over, didn't you? You snitched. And he's like, no, I didn't snitch. You know, we see Winter still inclined to like back out, but Catsby's like, we're gonna do this. We're gonna give it every chance to succeed. Their last chance to basically not do this was November 3rd, when they had a meeting between Winter, Catsby, and Thomas Percy. Percy and Catsby clearly needed to like confer, because I feel like Catsby probably could have said, like, shut this down. He went to Sion House to eat with Northumberland on the 4th, and he basically went to feel out the situation. Is Northumberland concerned? Is there a hint in court? And he comes back, he goes, no, we're all good. Seems to be no threat. So Guy goes to a station in the vault with a slow match and a watch, and, you know, the plan's set.
Yeah, he's like, nothing's working out. Our plan got torn to you know what, so
let's go.
Let's do this.
It doesn't seem like anyone's really caught on, so let's go.
Yeah, I mean, you can have a perfect plan or you can have a done plan, and he went for the done plan.
Exactly. So the Privy Council pretty much realized that something was going on, but they were like, the letter was a little like, didn't really give them enough, but they didn't want to alarm the conspirators, because they're like, if something is going to happen, we're not going to go ring a bell and be like, something's going to happen. So we have the afternoon of the 4th, the Earl of Suffolk, who is the Lord Chamberlain, had the arrangements for the new session in hand, made a tour of inspection accompanied by others, by Montague. They looked into the Lord's chambers and then descended into the ground level cellars, which run the length of the building. They kind of tended to notice a large pile of firewood covering the gunpowder and asked, you know, Fawkes, who's there, as John Johnson. Still, stupidest name. So dumb. They're like, hey, what's up with all this fuel? And, you know, Fawkes was like, it belongs to my master, Thomas Percy. Probably not the best name to give, but Suffolk recorded that the servant was a tall and desperate fellow, but the party was pretty much satisfied with the answer. Well, but they returned to court, and Montague goes, oh, Percy had rented out property in Westminster. You know, he's a Catholic. And this brings up King James' fears, who was like, yeah, no, we're doing a secondary deep search. Just imagine if the president was going now somewhere and they're like, yeah, we're doing that level of alert search where we're going. Because they basically said, oh, we're looking for stuff and hangings that aren't in the wardrobe. That was the excuse they gave. So they had Sir Thomas Kevet, keeper of the Palace of Westminster, do the search. This is where like the story varies based on who's telling it. They go about midnight. Kevet leaves the party into the cellar. They met Fawkes, again, fully clothed, in his boots, emerging from the room. They're like, okay, weird that he's dressed like this. And they haul away the brushwood and the wood, and they uncovered 36 barrels. It's about a ton of gunpowder underneath the Lord's chamber.
Wow.
It's a lot of gunpowder.
That's so much gunpowder. That's where all the money went.
Yeah. I think it's, you know, it's smart. They were like, okay, let's go at night, because there has to, like, there's no reason for someone to be there. It's like kind of like a storage situation, a shop situation. If you're there at midnight, like, you're not up to any good. So they arrest him, take him away. And this is really where we see Guy's fortitude and strength. The examiners who go after him wrote, I love this, source I found said, grudgingly of his fortitude, his Roman resolution. So he's tough as nails. He's not giving up shit. He did not implicate any of his colleagues apart from Percy, whose crimes were like, he had already brought up his name. He admits to recently have traveling to Flanders. And when they're like, why did you go? Why did you go? Why did you go? He was like, I wanted to see the country and pass away the time. I'm like, damn, this guy's got like ice in his blood.
He's a G.
When they could get him to speak, he's like, I don't like the Scottish because they're also Protestants. They're mostly Presbyterian. There are still Catholics there, but there's whole issues with that. And it became clear that he had talked to the Spanish crown in 1603. He basically would be like, I would have blown up James and all of like the lords, everyone in there, back across to Scotland. Like, I have no remorse. I would have done it. He basically was taking all the blame. He pretty much was silent except for muttering defiantly, quote, you would have me discover my friends, end quote. So he's keeping silent to protect everyone else. He holds on to his real name for 2 days. And this was only when he was taken to interrogators, getting the last bit of his the content of his pockets, and they found a letter addressed to him. There, it seems like all his efforts to defend the other plotters, conspirators, comes to naught. The Midland Rising, by the key conspirators, faces mass desertion. There was a brief skirmish at Holbeach House in Stafford, where Catesby, Percy, and the Wright brothers, perished. So that's 4 conspirators already down.
Out of like 100?
I think we're at 20 or something. And there's too many. Winter is taken prisoner on the 9th, and he reaches London on the 9th. We see really they're the only 2 main ringleaders left, and really I think Winter just kind of was like, yep, no, I'm gonna say anything to save my life, so he'll write it down. Fawkes was like, you caught me in this, I'm not gonna give you more than what you got.
Yeah.
He does give testimony on the 7th, 8th, and 9th for his early trial of treason. It was clear that he had been tortured when there was like the threat of revolt in the Shires. So really those early days right after he'd been captured, and it seemed like there was going to be an uprising, they're like, we're going to torture shit out of you because we need information. However, James did recommend, quote, the gentler tortures, end quote, first. And, if he doesn't talk, get more abusive. So that's nice. But once basically seems like the plot's gone, they're like, yeah, no, we're good. Both the remaining conspirators are in the tower until January 1606, so they're in there about a month and a half. And, they're like, let's get tried in Parliament to like speed up this. So they're tried on January 27th on charges of high treason. They have 8 of them. Everybody. So yeah, what we lost 4, so we're like at 12. So many. Everybody but Sir Everard Digby plead guilty. He pleads not guilty, and people are like, someone were like, oh no, I didn't do this, like it's not part of it. The trial lasted a day, and you could pay high prices to watch it. One MP complained that he had paid 10 shillings for standing room. So that's high cost.
Mm-hmm. They could have used that money when they were trying to get funds.
I know, if only they would have known. So others had been, mainly because others had been let into the same area for smaller sums. So he's pissed he got scalped.
Yeah.
It's rumored that both the king and queen attended in private. The Attorney General, Sir Edward Coke, launched into, his, I guess he's like the prosecution in a bombastic style against the prisoners, with the Earl of Northampton giving a tedious speech defending the king and his charges made by Digby, that James had gone back on the promises of toleration. Pretty much no one doubted that they were all going to be guilty. 4 men were condemned to die on the 30th of January in St. Paul's Churchyard. The following day, Winter, Ambrose Rookwood, Robert Keyes, and Fawkes received the same fate at the Old Palace Yard, Westminster. His body was quartered in fulfillment of his sentences, and most likely was put on gates entering London, because that's what they do.
Super classy, cheap decor.
I know. So why do we know about this? On November 5th, 1605, Londoners were encouraged to celebrate the king's escape from assassination by lighting bonfires, provided that, quote, this testimony of joy be carefully done without any damage or disorder. And it was an act of Parliament designating each November 5th as a day of Thanksgiving for a joy of deliverance. And that was pretty much continued until 18 59 as one of the 13, so we were a little off, conspirators. He is really the main one associated with the plot. There are conspiracies that he was the fall guy, which makes kind of sense, but
and he took it like, like he wasn't giving anybody up.
I think he's just like, people who are hardened soldiers or kind of spies. They're like, I'm here for this. This is my cause. I'm not giving you anything. But yeah,
they're here for it.
What do you think of Guy Fawkes now?
I think he's kind of foxy. For one, I like a man that's not a snitch. I thought it took some guts. I don't think they were smartest. I think they should have just blown it up in the first place. I don't know why they were like, let's dig some tunnels.
Yeah, I think the whole tunnel thing was they needed a way to get under there, but the fact that they stumbled across the tenant leaving is genius because, it saved them so much time. The struggle is Parliament kept getting delayed or put on break, and
yeah, sounds like nobody was doing any work per usual.
Oh yeah. So we'll be back next week with Natassia's story, and it'll be a more true crimey story. This was history and true crime because there was assassination plot. But you want to tell everyone where they can find your podcast and what it is about?
All right. So you can find Brodette Nation on anywhere you can find podcasts. We're on Spreaker, we're on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify. We are pretty much anything you can think of. The podcast is actually a storytelling podcast where I interview women that I've met in my life or women I've come across on social media. And I like to make sure that we talk about their story, whatever they're struggling with, and, how they got through it. And I think we've had some really impactful episodes, and it's fun. We have laughs. Sometimes we have tears. But it has been amazing for me to interview these women. And I was just tired of not seeing more uplifting stories and women leaning on each other. So I have a strong female tribe, and that is what Brodette Nation is to me. It's this tribe of women that are amazing. They're badasses, and they own their story. So if you want to hear women owning their story, give Brodette Nation a listen.
Okay, and we'll be back next week when Natassia takes on her first true crime story. Bye!
Hey, it's Natassia Turney from the Brodette Nation podcast, where I interview everyday women who own their stories. I've talked to military veterans, entrepreneurs, stay-at-home moms, fitness gurus, single ladies, and many more. My goal is to talk to as many different women as I can on issues that are important to their story and hopefully yours too. Listen on iTunes, Google Play, Podbean, and Stitcher. Follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Brodette Nation. For more information, visit my website, www.brodettenation.com.
Hey y'all, Jen and Lindsay here from Corpus Delicti podcast, here to tell you to check out our show. If true crime is your thing, it's ours too, with a touch of lightheartedness and a dash of southern charm. We cover compelling cases and crack them open for you. Serial killers, hitmen, historical hallmarks, we've got it all, and bring you new episodes every Tuesday morning. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and most other podcast apps. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter too. That's CorpusDelicti. See you Tuesday.
Cult of Domesticity. We're available on all podcatchers. Remember to rate, review, subscribe to help spread the word, or just force other people to listen to it. Our Facebook and Twitter are at Domestic Podcast, and our Instagram is at the Cult of Domesticity. We also have podcast merch at Threadless. As well, if you want to support us financially or show some appreciation, we have a PayPal tip jar and a Patreon, which has some pretty great perks. Any topic suggestions, feel free to email us at domesticpodcast@gmail.com. Remember to stay domestic and cult free.